This is Success in Excess, where elite founders, lawyers, and clinic owners engineer success through strategy, scale, and systems. Powered by GrowthX.
Guys, welcome Staci to the show. Staci is a remarkable attorney. She has so much knowledge and she's working in a field that is truly specialized. Staci, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you and looking forward to letting us know all the knowledge you have and how you found success in this specialized niche.
Thank you, Taryn. I'm excited to be here.
Well, awesome. So, let's break it down to the basics, the origin story. You had a thriving career in law way before launching DCI Group. What motivated you to step out and build your own brand when you were already at the top of the top, at the peak of your career, really killing it, taking that risk and jumping out? What started that whole transition for you?
The origin story is the best part of this whole journey. And that is, I went to law school. I went to big law. I worked in civil litigation. And I really focused on IP litigation work, patents, trademarks, copyright. But I felt that the adversarial way of litigating was just not fitting with my personality. So early when I was a baby lawyer, I hired a corporate intelligence firm in this big pro bono case. And for a year, I worked with them. I thought of private investigators as cheating spouses and surveillance. I had no idea there were this sophisticated business intelligence community. And so after working with them, I always in the back of my head said, maybe I should go be a PI for a couple of years, get my license and go back and being a litigator with a PI license. So after about 4.5 years of litigating, I took a leap of faith. They asked me to join them. I had to apply, got the job, and I helped launch and really grow the San Francisco office of this New York-based global firm. And when I started, we were 60 people, and when I left, we were over 500. I was a partner, I was in-house counsel, and I learned everything: how to be a PI, how to do business intelligence, how to run a book of business. It was all very soup to nuts, a very incredible education. And then about 4 years ago, I realized there was a problem. And that is, I started doing workplace investigations as a PI and as an attorney, but realizing that fraud internal investigations required both PIs and a workplace attorney and often forensic accountants and other professionals. And I wanted to create essentially the first woman-owned national private investigation firm and workplace investigation law firm that could do everything involving investigating fraud. And that's how I started it.
Wow. So pretty much you found a gap in the business model. You saw that there was a first need for this type of service. And you're right. Most people think private investigators are just that, cheating spouses, things of that nature. You don't realize, the corporate espionage that, is behind the scenes that requires, extremely tech savvy, knowledgeable, professionals that are going in. And it comprises of, this better than anybody, but, forensic accountants, professional investigators, and then you jumped out there. And the craziest part, I think, is, you were already so successful. From 60 to 500, you become partner of a global firm. For all reasons, people would say, you've put in the work. You've reached the tippy top, and now, but I think that personality trait that you have to make things better, to, always want for more, better, really, perfecting it and just trying to do the best that you can, even though seeing how much you have grown, you see that there were still gaps where a company even like this that was globally recognized, they were having gaps. They didn't have forensic accountants. They didn't have this, and now you built that out. So when you first started, how did you really approach to getting your name out there and building the credibility? Obviously, you came with a book of business. You had a Rolodex. People knew you. But how did you really build the name for the firm itself?
Well, I actually intentionally had a name. I started out with Drescher Consulting and Investigations. That's where DCI comes from. I don't like firms that have their name on the founder or the president's name on the door. Because I am a team. You're not, even if you think you're hiring me, you're hiring the collective knowledge of my employees and community. So I don't want a brand that is too recognizable. And the reason why is that I do a lot of work that never surfaces. You do not. So I'll tell you, as a PI, most of the time, my work doesn't surface. Lawyers hire me. I work under the attorney-client and work product privileges. And if another side, opposing side says, I want, did you hire any investigators? And I want to see their work product. The lawyer can say, that is privileged and protected. As a workplace attorney, I have to be neutral, impartial, unbiased. If I'm out there talking about my work in minutia and with too much passion, a very enterprising plaintiff's lawyer who files a lawsuit for wrongful termination and they were terminated based on my report, imagine they can go and say, well, this person has a bias towards this or bias towards that, or they're speaking about, sexual misconduct, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, I like being under the radar, but all my clients know my name. So my name is out there. I actually don't want people Googling me and then just cold calling me. I don't take cold calls. I only take referrals. And once you get into a couple firms, you get constant referrals. And I have a lot of repeat clients. And so my name is the most important thing. And it's funny, some people call me DCI Facts because that's our URL. And I like it. And it works. It works. We are not slow. So and we're small and nimble. I don't need to feed 40 people in San Francisco like I did before. So I can say no, and we can really be strategic and scrappy.
And some would say that's the best way, because as you can, and there's, a fatal flaw in most businesses that scaled, beyond a certain point. And especially someone that started their own firm like yourself, you've grown it since the beginning. You've been there from the very, very start. Not only do you lose control, which is one thing we have to learn as business owners for delegation, but it loses the authenticity, the mission statement, what you came into the business to start when you have 1,000 people under you. And it's not a matter of malice or bad intentions. It's just, there's no way to manage each 1,000 people. Everybody gets the same quality and attention. Everybody gets the same, direction. It just doesn't work. And I think nowadays, as you see, boutique firms such as yourself, specialized boutique firms, smaller firms, we're not talking about, the Paul Weiss or the Wilmer Hale or Winston Strawn's, but the smaller boutique firms that have experts like yourself that, can pretty much kick ass at any big law firm, but you're in your own boutique firm. And what that really tells clients is not that, this is a smaller firm with lesser abilities. It's more or less, you are the specialist that I'm coming to that's going to give me the time, dedication, and attention I need to my case. And I can trust that I'm a priority of yours and I'm not just a case file on one of your hundreds of junior associates' desks.
Right. And I'm not trying to feed the bottom line. The other thing is private equity bought my really heavily invested and kind of changed the dynamic of my prior firm. And the bigger the firm, the bigger the pockets you need to fill. And quality is more important to me than quantity. Now, I'm not short-sighted. I want to scale. I want to grow. I am not adverse to acquisition, a merger. I'm just building something that doesn't really exist on the West Coast or really nationally, but truly PI firms in the East Coast and in Europe and in Asia, they don't really have big offices in the West Coast. Maybe some have a boutique here or boutique there. And so there is also a need for me, for my firm, for my investigators. And I don't hire junior people who don't know what they're doing. Lots of my former colleagues are coming to me and saying, I want to work with you. And these are incredibly talented people, who have 10 plus years of experience, a lot more, and speak many languages. And the other thing is, when people think of boutique firms, they think they don't have the infrastructure of a bigger firm. My old big corporate intelligence firms, the global ones, they spend a lot of money on databases and on resources. We also spend that money. Maybe not all of them, but we've invested a lot of money in these resources so that we can provide the same quality and depth, but still at, not inflated prices.
Well, if you look at it like this, and I can say a prime example. So my dad, he's an IP attorney. He owns his own firm. He started in big law and, he worked his way up to a partner in an IP firm in big law. And when he ended up leaving, It was just that same thing. He started his own firm. It's a boutique firm. And the attorneys that, his clients would get now are the same attorneys, same quality, if not higher than the large, big law firms. The only difference was there was more time allocated towards them. You weren't just a number, and you're paying, a fraction of the cost where, big firms, you're paying $2,500, $5,000 an hour.
It's unreal. It's
Unreal.
inflation works in all shapes and sizes here.
It's crazy.
So the other thing that's important is, and this is when you're at a big firm, you have big firm, like you can send an email to all the lawyers saying, does anyone know an expert in, food, something, something? And someone in your firm does and is going to refer you. When you are small, you have to build your community. So I lead a professional group. I belong to a professional group that has, I think, 10,000 members in the U.S. I belong to various legal and investigative groups and listservs. And so I feel that I have the same quality of resources, but you just, like I said, you have to be more flexible and nimble and scrappy and put the time in to make relationships with people who are at other firms that you respect.
Well, I mean, even speaking of that, like the people have to understand that you don't have the Rolodex that comes with the big firms, just like you said. And I think one of the things I noticed on your LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken, was, you have, I believe it's that Bay Area group that you do. Where is it?
Yes, I'm the group leader of it's a professional, I should get paid by providers. It's a professional networking group. I've been a member since 2011. So since it was a much smaller, and it is a perfect opportunity for boutique and solos, law firms, intelligence, CPAs, and any kind of professional services to join a group. No one's your boss. No one's your subordinate. No one's really your competitor. You're just there to network, have a community, socialize, and also just find ways to get to refer each other to work.
Yeah, and these are the type of things that make you a top performer and why you're succeeding, because a lot of people don't understand that the business of business is changing nowadays. Networking, jumping out there, making sure you're well known. And a lot of people, they go with everybody has the intent, and there is a high intent. Yes, we're going out to network, to meet people hopefully in the same field that I'm in, but not conflict of interest. Basically, like we want to work together, we can benefit. But there are a lot of people that just go out there for one thing, right? Here's my business card. Call me if you want me. And they build no relationships, and you see it fails. I mean, they say, "Oh, I get no results from going." Well, here's the thing: you can go to a networking event going with that look of half cup empty or half cup full. Get to know people, and if you build solid, real relationships with them, I mean, that's good enough. You can't go there with just the thought process of, if they're not buying, I'm not, that whole scenario. I feel like it's definitely a hindrance. And I've met quite a few people that I've talked to that, say, hey, you want to go to a networking event? Well, I don't think anybody there is going to, and I'm like, everybody there probably knows somebody that could be a
Yep.
client of yours.
And I believe in the mentality. There's a book called The Go-Giver. I'm not necessarily prophesizing this book, but the idea is that when you give, when you think of others, I belong to various listservs. And when I see, oh, this person needs a plaintiff side lawyer that specializes in this, I know someone, I will email that to the person I know and say, is this a good referral for you? And then I'll make the introduction. I get nothing. I don't get work out of it, but when you put that intention into the world, people think of you. And I have to do a lot of educating of what I do too, because here's the problem. When you do if you're both a law firm and a PI firm and a business intelligence firm, people think of you as one thing. That Staci's a workplace misconduct attorney. Staci's a PI. They don't think so. By doing that, you are also staying top of mind. People look at your LinkedIn. People think of you, and that's important. And my goal, Taryn, is to be the first phone call. So I'm often called and I have to pass the work to someone else or another firm because it's not a good fit for me. But the fact that that person called me first is my goal, and to create a good network. And I think that is a really strong marketing tool because it makes you a thought leader. It makes you a trusted referral source. And then that person, those two people then are going to think of you. And so you just have to kind of have that mentality that I'm not here to take, I'm here to give. And there's just this natural flip side to that of being top of mind in
Oh,
the
yeah. I mean, it's very clear if you look at any marketing strategy, let's say specifically for your type of business. 'Cause, you're a little bit, yes, there's a consumer aspect, but for all purposes, we can say B2B, you're dealing with other firms, things of that nature, corporations, a little bit of maybe B2C, but mostly B2B. Well, especially let's use LinkedIn as an example. A lot of times it's about, not timing the market. Are you valid? Are you present? Are you constantly out there posting, engaging with others, reposting, and just making yourself be seen? Because you may not be able to get the client on the first round because maybe they don't have a need for you today. But by staying present and consistent, you know, just checking in, following up, liking posts. Let's say in 2 months they need somebody specifically for your skill set or around your realm. At that point, naturally, logically, they're going to reach out to you because, wow, I need a PI attorney that can handle this type of investigation. Oh, Stacy, she sends me a message, a couple times a week. It's a very natural process, especially when you're in a field like yours where it's not really dime a dozen. They're getting bombarded with, let's say hypothetically in my field, I deal in legal marketing. It's not really as much as regular marketers, but if
yeah.
somebody needed marketing, they pretty much could open up LinkedIn and find 100,000 people at any point that say I can do marketing for you. Where in your field, it'd be hard to find, it'd be hard to put 100 people together that all do what you do. I would
You
challenge.
maybe 100. You could probably find 100 people, but I am an entrepreneur at heart. Most lawyers, definitely most PIs are not. And people find, I mean, that's why you have that's why you have this career as a legal marketer, because lawyers here's the thing. Lawyers are very smart. The good ones are smart. We're not necessarily the best communicators unless they're, a trial attorney. And marketing and business development is like, makes them kind of want to cringe, a lot of people. And I turn that on the head, whereas I'm actually a very social person. I like to have fun. I like to be around people, not necessarily an extrovert, but just I enjoy learning about other people's story, their business. And so you think of it as like, I'm just creating a network, and rather than I'm marketing. If you are of a particular ethnicity, religion, race, gender, all of these different, these differentiations have groups. I belong to the Women in White Collar Defense Association. It's just back from a retreat with 32 other women defense lawyers and kind of people in that world. And I work with them a lot, and I do like fraud investigations. So I'm one of them. But it was the most magical 2 days hanging out with a bunch of just badass women. And just being in that kind of comfortable, but, really astute community. I think that that's what people need to find. Like, there's an Asian American Bar Association, there's this bar association, there's that, get involved. And because people want to refer and help others who have a similar story.
Absolutely. And you couldn't have said it better. I can't tell you how valuable, one thing that you said earlier is kind of paying it forward. There's so many times I refer, actually yesterday itself, I have a client that does attorney ethics and professional misconduct and compliance, specialized niche. And, I know a few attorneys right now that are, mixed with private equity. They're building some new AI apps for the legal field to go national, and just sending his information over because I know they need an attorney that can look at compliance and make sure that they're not violating anything. And it's just as simple as, I didn't get anything out of it. It's just a simple, hey, let's let me send them your way. If you guys can connect and it works out, great. And if it doesn't, no harm lost. I don't need anything out of it because that's the whole goal of this. And I would appreciate if somebody did the same for me, vice versa. As you've built your firm so successfully, you're a natural entrepreneur. You're going out there, you're making your face known, you're making your company known, but at the same time, you're so humble where I don't want my name on the masthead. I want my people to understand that I am successful because of my team work together to make this whole system, flow successfully and seamlessly. So all these aspects that you carry to the position that you hold make it just that much better. But you guys operate in a space, and this is kind of one of the things that we're talking about, where confidentiality and professionalism is everything. How do you balance and maintain discretion while still trying to find a way to market your expertise effectively?
That's a good question. Most of the work I do is privileged. so I can't tell stories with
Yeah.
names and places and dates, but I can give anecdotes. I can talk about this wire fraud case for this, very wealthy nonprofit. I don't have to name names, but I can talk about what I've learned, lessons learned, and pitfalls and difficulties and challenges. Like, again, being vulnerable, saying, I don't just walk in and know what I'm doing, but I walk in and ask a lot of questions and make sure and check in with, counsel and HR, and I'm honest too. So here's another thing I've learned, and that is setting boundaries. So I build, I'm not just a business developer, so I do the work. I can't just, so I have been really trying to kind of set aside like 15 minutes a day. That is when I'm doing my kind of checking, making sure I got all my emails taken care of from the prior day, that if I did an introduction to follow up, like that, just set aside that time. I'm not on social media, really. I mean, like a little bit with close friends, but I am very careful with privacy settings, very careful with what I put out there, especially since I get to use everyone else's social media faux pas and issues and my investigations. But I think that you just have to be careful, but you also want to be interested. There are people, PIs in my field, who like post every day about this and that. It's just not how I want to be known. Like, I want people to know that I'm trustworthy, I'm discreet, but they still know me. So I actually hired a ghostwriter. I shouldn't say this, but she's prepared. She interviews me on topics that the topics that we decide together. And then she writes a blog, and I'm a little behind. We're going to launch it. But the idea is that I'll take a step back. Just, you didn't ask this question, but this is like my one piece of advice to kind of everyone. So I was an intern in DC in my last year of college, and I went to breakfast. Dianne Feinstein, who was then the California, would have a monthly breakfast for DC interns. And I said, what piece of advice would you give to someone like me at 22 years old? And she said, when you can afford it, whatever you don't like doing, outsource. The only way you are going to succeed is if you outsource everything that you don't want to do. And so that's how I run my life. That's how I run my business. I have an operations manager who runs my company and like texts me when I forget to do things and just keeps me on task. And I've got, like I said, a ghostwriter. I've got really good controller, bookkeeper who like just takes care of everything. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I want to do. And what I don't want to do, I pay someone to do it because I can afford to do it. And that is the only way to scale. And I have an executive coach. I have all these things so that my head is not so far up my own rear end. And that someone, can tell me what's really, how I'm doing, and see the blind spots that I'm not seeing.
That is so wise that you bring that up. I have a mentor that, has told me something similar in my life. Know what you do well. You know where your strengths are. And the things that aren't your strengths, just, if you can, pay somebody to do it, because the time you waste on something that you're not good at, that you don't like, that you don't really want to do, it's not going to be done well. And if it's a component that needs to be done for your business, if you have that ability, do it. I mean, yes, there are times in the beginning, you have to bite the bullet and you have to do stuff that you don't want to do. That's just the reality of entrepreneurship. But once you get to a certain level, the also part of being a successful entrepreneur is understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, and understanding where are you better off having somebody paying somebody to do it correctly, whether it's your books, whether it's management. I mean, you got it on point, and you're absolutely right. And that's why you can spend the time you need to on the things that you're going to do successfully. And that kind of makes up for everything in the long run, because that's what brings the money through the door at the end of the day. The other stuff doesn't, right? So in that aspect, so you guys have been discreet, and I definitely feel you on this. I don't do social media. I do LinkedIn from a business perspective, but outside of that, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you may see a post once a year to like my sister or mom, happy birthday. But I feel like in this day and age, it used to be where the more you knew about somebody, the better, and like the more power you had. But now, in my opinion, I feel like the less people know about you is now the bigger thing. And the people that do know something about you, it's more of a it's a privilege, right? Because nowadays you can look up anybody, go on Facebook, Instagram, you find out their birthday, their favorite color, their favorite ice cream, where they went to school, who their boyfriend. I mean, I
Yes,
think
that's
knowledge
true.
now needs to be kind of reserved, and it's privileged to the people that are in my life that are important, and that's why they know something about me. It's not just a click of a button, if you understand what I mean.
Well, it's funny. I'm married to someone who is very vocal, and he was a professional journalist for many, many years. So he's not hiding anything. So if you want to know what's going on in our house, you just go to his social media. And I actually disagree a little bit in that I find that the more my clients get to know me, the more they have trust and faith in me. It was a really interesting topic. When you're a working parent, some people want to kind of put their family and that part of their life in the background and just say, I am always here for you. But I'm really into setting boundaries. I mean, I'm a 24/7 always available, but my clients know that. But I put out of office, and I say I might be delayed. I always put someone that, if it's emergency, someone to contact. But I don't sit there with my phone at the breakfast table, making sure that I'm responding to everything. And I do have ways of kind of trying to navigate both, but I don't want my kids to see me on my phone all the time, not paying attention to them. I think people don't talk enough in person, don't use their, everyone just texts
Yeah.
and texts in that generation. So I actually think it's really good to be honest about who you are, but just being careful, like they don't need to know everything. But if I go, like I went to this music festival and it was so much fun. And I mentioned it to my professional group because we had our meeting like the day after. I was like, everyone just be kind. I might be a little tired from it. And some people were like, oh, you went to Portola. I didn't think you did. Just were like, it connected us. Some people were like, good for you. I know you work a lot. And some
Yes.
people had no idea what I was talking about. And that's fine. So it's good to just, connect beyond that. And also lawyers are so, like I said, we're kind of elitist. So it's good to kind of get off your pedestal and
Yes.
show that you are a human being.
Normal human. That you're one of us? Yeah. All right. So, many professional service firms like yours, generally, especially law firms, and this is why I bring this up, because law firms, like we said, they're elitist. For a long period, it's been considered an old boys club, very hard and reluctant to transitioning to whether it be new ways of practicing law or new technologies implemented into the support of the legal system. So, whether it's intake, client nurturing, lead management, what kind of systems have you guys tried to implement that has created real operational growth at the DCI group?
So there are certain pillars. And I said I hired an operations lead, and she's an independent contractor. Works probably about 20, somewhere between 10 and 20 or more hours a week. And she keeps me in check. And anytime, like I got a new client, and they wanted me to do all this insurance, kind of proof of insurance. I know that I'm going to just put that email aside and forget to do it. Forward it and then keep her accountable. So pillar 1 is operations leads. Pillar 2 is IT. I have an IT person. Pillar 3, I started out when I was a solo with like this one bookkeeper, and my books were a mess. So I making the investment, and I have an incredible outside bookkeeper controller. I have a accountant that focuses on women-owned growth businesses. And I just make sure that I invest in tools to operate smoothly. Our time entry tools connects with our invoicing, which connects with the QuickBooks, and just everything kind of like I'm trying to set the word is the kind of the stage for that when we grow, when more people come on board, we already
Yes.
have the tools implemented to accommodate that.
Yes. Wow, wow, wow. That is so amazing that you're saying that, because there are so many, and I just want to say attorneys, not attorneys, doctors, business owners in general, entrepreneurs that fail to implement systems. And it's always that, oh, when the time is right, we'll set this up when I have enough clients. And the thing is, if you're following SOPs,
Yep.
whether they're marketing SOPs, intake, admin, bookkeeping, it doesn't matter if you're bringing in one client, 100 clients, or 1,000,000 clients, and that goes into any variable we can measure, because that is the practice that needs to be done to keep the system well oiled and operating.
Mm-hmm.
And time again, I have a client right now. They own a medical practice, very successful on books, on the paper, right? Not profit wise, but revenue. They're doing about $500,000 a month. Looks good.
Yeah, that's great.
but none of the systems are operating. So when you actually look at the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
they're clearing, and it's sad to say this, they just came to us, so I'm in the process of fixing everything. So this is not from our systems, but off of 500, they're doing about 14,000 profit, which is extremely low considering
Yeah.
what they're making. And there's no system, there's no bookkeeping systems, but he has 3 bookkeepers, which that doesn't make sense to me,
No.
right? Paying for 20, 30 magazine subscriptions, like spending like almost $20,000 a month to have placements in magazines. And I'm like, are you tracking any leads? Has there been any results? Like, you've spent X amount of dollars. Is there any tangible, trackable data that shows that this is paying off to you? Where is
Mm-hmm.
it coming from?
Yep.
And all these questions come. And he's like, well, I didn't think we were big enough. And the question is, if you wait until you're big enough to track, one, you're going to be in a big problem, in a big hole, because you should have done it before then. And second is, Warren Buffett said this better than anybody. If you're not measuring or tracking your systems, you're never going to find success, because you're never going to know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. It's simple as that. And the fact that you are, very apprehensive, proactive, and have the foresight to understand that, you've grown these businesses very successfully. You know the value between, engineering a system that is built for success versus feeling and being intuitive. And there's a lot of people that are like, I feel I'm making, if you can't tell me what your receivables are this month or last month down to, let's say, the dollar, right? Then there's a problem, because you don't really know what you're making and what's going out of your pocket, let
Well,
alone.
I could look it up. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head these things. There's one more piece to this, though, Tara, that I didn't mention, and that is a project management tool. So I remember a couple years ago, I was on vacation in Costa Rica with my family, and I forwarded an email to one of my colleagues saying, like, don't forget this. That person just missed it. No fault to them, just it did. And at the end of the week, the client's like, oh, you can still get it to me tomorrow. And we're like, oh, crap. So scramble, we did do it, but it was a mess. And I was like, I don't want to repeat that. So we have a project management tool where it's a case intake system, automatically we use Google Business. So automatically does the Google Business Drive, Clio, which is the time entry, it just kind of all sets it up. But we use signed tasks. So I can make sure that task is in it. There's an app for it, so you can do it remotely. And we use chat more than emails now. So the key is, if you forward an email, you have to go in chat and say, hey, I just forwarded you an email from blah, don't forget blah. And if it's a new task, then we put it in Notion. And I hired a consultant to integrate it into my system. Like, these are all things that seem to be kind of a bit way too much for a firm, a small firm, but like, you gotta do it, because otherwise it's all in your head. That's just not a good place for it to be.
Nope. And that's what you're doing right. And that's why you're set up for success. Because when you are growing, like, you don't want to be in the position where, there's so many companies, specifically law firms, let's say, where you ask them, hey, if you had 20 clients come to you today saying, hey, I want to sign up and get started, and every single person wants their work done generally in the same timeline, right? Can your firm sustain it? Would you have to turn them away, or are you going to lower the quality of work, or are you taking it on with the risk, knowing that you may not be able to service every single client successfully? And if that's the case, then you need to look at your systems, and your systems aren't built for success. Now, yes, 20 is kind of a bigger number, but the reality is, can you take on 5? Can you take on 10? Do you have a system to manage and operate, structure, do the executions? And project management is so important. A lot of times, even CRM, I can't even tell you how many firms that are small firms, mid-sized, even mid-sized, where they got maybe 5 to 10 attorneys, maybe a couple of paralegals. They don't even have CRMs. They're just going off of, and the thing is, well, I like to
They
give
use
my
their
client.
inbox as their CRM. It's really scary.
Oh my God.
And it doesn't have to be Salesforce, which is really expensive. There are other tools,
There's
but I
so
will
many.
say being organized is one of the pillars of being a good investigator or being a good attorney. Some law firms need 2 cases at a time, and they're busy because they're huge. Some are like plaintiff side, or, labor and employment, and they have 20 to 30 cases going. We have a lot. I might have someone come to me and say, hey, we have a $200,000 judgment. Can you just do a little digging? And I only charge them, $2,000, $3,000 for an asset search. I might have another one where it's a $50,000 budget for a multi-million-dollar asset search. So each case still has work product, still requires billing, still requires all the things. One's going to bring in, a much higher, but you just need to be an organized system. And you said SOPs. I didn't even know what an SOP was before I started my company. I just didn't even know. And now I've got so many. They're all in this tool, this project management tool. And it's amazing how organized it is behind the curtain when it wasn't before.
Well, we have to leverage our strengths. And the reality is this, I was told this by another attorney, a pretty successful personal injury attorney, a younger guy. And, I started practicing this a couple of years ago when we started the EOS system, which I have found to be pretty successful when it comes to managing the team and assignments. It's kind of like I guess, an ideology. It's not so much, it's a project management system, but it's more of a practice of an ideology of how to run your business. But outside of that, with the SOPs, I look at things like this. If I have to do it more than once, then it needs to have a process behind it, because I'm generally going to do it again and again. And if that's the case, then at some point in time, I need one of my staff members or team members to do it, or somebody else to do it. And if I'm the bottleneck when it comes to any of these replicatable tasks because nobody else knows how to do it, then I can't blame them for it being late. I can't blame them for, it's not getting done, because if I'm supposed to be the leader, then I need to know how to lead and how to make sure that they have the resources and the assets and accessories to fulfill the task that I'm asking them when I'm asking them to do so. And I think that's another thing. A lot of bosses, they get upset because their staff members don't know what to do, but nobody trains them. Training nowadays is like, they feel like, oh, well, I hired you because your resume said this. You said you had 3-4 years of experience, blah, 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 blah. And then that doesn't mean they know your system. That doesn't mean they know how your business operates or how you like things to get done or how your client likes things.
Yep.
So if you're not investing in training your team, don't expect them to perform at their highest or even perform well. You know what I mean?
And now I get to be the kind of boss where I'm very generous. Like, there's, of course we all want to make money, but in the end, you need to be thoughtful and generous with your team, because
Of course.
without them, I'm not functioning. The other thing is, employees are really expensive. You do not just have their salary and payroll tax and healthcare, benefits, all that stuff. It's just, employees are expensive. So there are a lot of people, a lot of lawyers, a lot of PIs, they have gone out on their own and have, kind of little research firms, and they are subcontractors to bigger firms. So I have about half a dozen really sophisticated private investigators, speak various languages, that I use when we have overflow or I have a particular case for their help. And these are all people I have worked with for, they're not just some random person. They're people I worked with at my former firm, people I work with now. I heavily edit their work so they can kind of see it, how we do things. They have an email with my company. We have very, very, very strong confidentiality agreements. I make sure there's no conflict when I engage them for something, but I have the overflow, and that is very, very important. And none of these people want to be an employee. They like having their own firm. They like being 1099. They like writing off everything. They've done the employee thing. So, and there's some people that want to be employees and don't want to deal with the minutia of running a company. So they're all intelligent and they're all, wonderful. But like, I treat some of my contractors like employees in that they're on training sessions. They have a username, access to the project management tool. Just a couple of them, but they are truly a part of the team. They come to our retreats. They're not a W-2 employee because they want the flexibility to work as they want.
But there's still assets to the company, and there's still people you can rely on and you can trust, and the professionalism is there. I mean, I deal with independent contractors all the time, and some of them I truly treat like they're my W-2 employees because I can rely on them. I can trust them. I can come to them for advice and guidance, and hey, they want this type of system, but I'm thinking that this might be better for them. What's your thoughts on it? And it's not a nickel and dime. Well, hey, I talked to you for 15 minutes. I need this. And it kind of makes everything, your employees, your team is your biggest asset, because you have to ask yourself this. If you're a company that has, let's say, more than 5 clients, I wouldn't even say 5, let's say 2 or 3 clients. realistically, you can't do it by yourself. And if you can't do it by yourself, then understand that those same employees that people like to mistreat and treat, not well, are the reason you make the money you make, because they're your support system. Because if you were off doing everything for these clients, you would have no time to generate new clients. You would have no time to do any marketing. You would
Yep.
be literally stuck fulfilling their work. And at that point, you're better off being a W-2, because at least you have some flexibility. But, bring up that concept of trust. And as we talk about your client journey, in your line of work, trust, we could say, is a currency. How does, your branding, your communication, how you handle your clients, what is that distinct, unique factor that you guys bring to the table that helps you reinforce the client's confidence before they even speak to you?
Well, my reputation is everything. So our work is sourced, meaning if I say X, I'll say according to, and then we'll either give you a copy of it or a link to it. I'm not just saying, oh, take my word for it. Everything is sourced and clarified and detailed. So that's step one, and that's part of reputation. The other thing is my engagement letter. It's very professional. I have different ones for business intelligence, for being a PI, and for being workplace attorney. And I am very clear in the workplace attorney one that I am impartial, that I do not give legal advice. We're very, very, very clear with the boundaries, that they're going to be honest and truthful with me, and I'm going to be honest and truthful with them. And I actually have I learned this the other day. I'm going to put a civility clause in my
Right.
contracts, essentially saying we will be civil to each other. These are very, because a lot of these cases are really intense. And that is something that I'm going to require of my clients, and that I always am civil with them, but I want them to be civil to me. And the other thing is, so when I interview someone, we do a witness interview, whether it's by phone or in person, the introduction is written out. The person who does the interview, because it's not always me, it's my colleagues, we sign it. So here's just one example, but if, let's say, we get deposed, or the witness says, oh, well, Staci said that she was a FedEx worker. Staci lied, told me this. I have my script that I said how I introduced myself, who my client was if I had to tell them, what's the reason why I was calling them. And then, of course, there's no script because we have to go with the conversation. But at least the introduction to the conversation is written down. The client has seen it and signed off on it. And I'm signing, like when I call and I finish an interview, I sign that page and I save it. And so I luckily have not CYA needed to, I've had situations where witnesses claimed X and I was like, nope, remember this. And they're like, that, shut it down. But those are the kind of things you have to do. And that's have been in-house counsel at my old firm. I just saw so many things, so many, something almost happened and we're like, well, now we know that could have happened and gone sideways. So let's put up these structural barriers or, hurdles that we have to jump through before. So that thoughtfulness is something that I think my clients know I bring to the table. And it's a lot different than a lot of other PIs and how they approach things.
Seeing that passion that you bring to it, and that's one of the things that is important, drafting letters, making sure that people understand your intentions along the way, it just makes it feel as if at the end of the day that they're not just hiring your firm for a task or a service, but they're getting somebody that's going to really look out for their best interests. And that's what they need. They have so many different people telling them, in my opinion, you should do this. In my professional opinion, you should do that. But sometimes guidance is the most important. And I feel like, just in talking to you and just the way that you speak, I feel like, the way that you communicate is very guiding, where I may not know the answer right now, but I'm going to help you figure it out, type of thing. And that's what people want. They don't want to be told, they don't know. They don't want to be told that what they know is wrong, but somebody that's going to kind of guide them to the right answer is the most important. With that, what do you believe are the biggest missed opportunities for law adjacent firms when it comes to their digital marketing or lead generation practice today? Like in your specific field, it's not, Google isn't where people really go to find people like you. They may, but it's usually through closed networks, referrals,
Yep.
professional systems like LinkedIn.
So one of the thing is there's the Association of Workplace Investigators. If you are a workplace attorney, and some are just PIs, but you need to be involved in that network. I get cases from that directory where clients who say, I looked for X and I did a search term and you were you came up. Definitely, thing number one is whatever professional networking groups or professional groups you belong to, go and read your profile every 6 months and make sure it accurately reflects what the message you want to be sent. LinkedIn too. I change it all the time. Like I'll go back and I'll be like, wait, that doesn't just sit right with me today. I don't want it to say that. I'm going to just change that up. So make sure that you are out there, that you're, if you feel comfortable, your picture is there. It's a good photo. You don't look like you're 32 when you're really 49. Dating apps don't, smoke and mirrors doesn't go well. So that's the one thing. Also, if you are a personal injury attorney or a plaintiff side employment attorney, you don't get repeat clients or criminal defense lawyers. You don't get repeat clients. You get referrals. So your SEO or your Google searches, those are really important. If you are an intellectual property patent litigator, you don't really want your clients finding you through Googling, so it's kind of the same goes with me. So you would just how do I get my work? I get it through referrals. Other workplace attorneys, I have a kind of a small clique of people. They know what I'm good at. I know what they're good at. I know which ones speak languages. I know if one of them is kind of slow or a case settled or something, email this group with 10 or 12 people, whatever. And if a case comes in and I can't take it, I'm going to refer them. So your quote unquote competitors are your best referral sources. So find your community, refer to each other, get each other for help. So that's really important. And then for me, I just need to stay top of mind. So LinkedIn, mail, I use MailChimp to quarterly send an email with not nothing lame, thoughtful. That's why I'm having this person write blogs for me. I just finished this fraud case. It was Banana Town and I learned so much. I want to communicate this to my client. And so I have someone who's a way better writer than me, scribe it. And then and it's my words, but my weakness is I'm not good writer for pleasure. I'm a good writer for reports,
for work,
motions, that, but not articles. I need someone to take my gobbledygook and turn it into something else. So that's know your weaknesses and target how you get work. Target the audience on how you get work.
Staci, I can tell you as we wrap this up, all your insight today has been invaluable. I mean, you've come to success very, young when you were growing the firm prior. From 60 to 500 people, you hit the very top. And then you found another gap in the system and you decided to start your own firm, which now has grown to be an extremely successful, nationally recognized brand that's continued to grow and actually soar. I mean, at the end of the day, you've built systems around it and you've done it right. And I think that's, you brought up one thing in the beginning of our conversation about the difference between big law and regular, small startup law firms is they don't have that corporate structure, that corporate governance. But that's wrong. What you've built are systems in place to establish and actually foster the growth on the micro level, so that in the future, when you hit the macro level, right, you will still be successful. And I think all that is just beautifully well done.
Thank you. I appreciate those kind words.
No,
like I said, learning as I go, but I ask the people, when I look at another firm who's a little bigger than me and I say, what worked, what didn't work? And because they know I'm a nice person and I'm not going to try and steal their business, they tell me. And I'm an open book. I'm not here to shut people down. I like beauty contests. I like that there being other people out there. I'm also I want to retire someday. Someone else needs to take over. So
gotta make yourself replaceable. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I just want to correct
one thing. In my old firm, I was one of 13 partners. There were 2 of us or 3 of us on the West Coast, but it was I was not the name on the door. I was a,
yeah.
But it's
but it's still a collective, and you were part of that growth. I mean, 50, was it 60 to 500? Even if you were one of 13 partners, you were on a team that was successful. And yes, there's other people that played a part, but we look at your current venture also being successful, also being in a similar field, and we look at it, we can't negate that, hey, maybe you're onto something here, because if it was just the benefit of the other 12 players, then we wouldn't see you at the success you are now. So
also, one last thing, your reputation is everything, right?
yes, ma'am.
So you leave your big firm, do not burn bridges.
Never. Yeah.
I mean, we don't have non-competes in California that are really enforceable, but even though I signed one that I knew was not enforceable, I still abided by it, because I didn't know if I was going to get my biggest case from my former employer. I didn't know if one of my former partners was going to start a thing and call me and say, hey, let's do this together and collaborate. Like, your reputation is everything. So don't be a jerk. Don't steal clients. Don't burn bridges. Be honest. Say, I don't know when you don't know. Help out when you can do it. Like, it's so important that.
You couldn't have said it better. I have a client right now that left one of the largest personal injury firms on the East Coast, extremely large firm. And, right now, and because she didn't burn any bridges, her biggest client to date was a client that she got from this firm. They basically gave it to her. They've helped her mentor. They were not, the thing is, when she left, she thought it was going to be a little bit, standoffish or negative.
Yep.
And her mentors, who were also, the senior partners, and they were very supportive. They helped her get on her feet. They helped her, here, this is what you need to do. And they even sent cases her way to make sure that she was successful in her venture. And that would have only happened if she hadn't burned those bridges and hadn't tried to steal, because she could have stole the cases on her desk where clients were like, hey, I want you, I don't want them. But she understands, how to do it right. And you did the same thing. And, good karma always pays off, in my opinion. So,
thank you.
Staci, it's been an honor having you on the show. Your insights have, like I said, been invaluable. Everything you've said, from how to operate a business and how to carry yourself with your team, to how to set up systems and SOPs so you're set up for success. All of that really shows us that, you're not just a top performer in the field of business, in the field of law, but a person that carries her life successfully and really embodies what it means to be a well-rounded, good human being. And it's just been a great time speaking with you.
Thank you, Taryn. It's been great. Okay.
Yeah. If somebody needs your firm, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, my email address is, the contact us in the LinkedIn and also on the website is dci@dcifacts.com. That goes to me and a couple other people, but my email is Staci, Staci @dcifacts.com. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of us. I do check LinkedIn messages. I do get people reaching out, old clients who may not have my email. It's probably the best way. I keep my website intentionally lean. I really do need to refurbish it. I just haven't had a chance, but it's intentionally lean because I want you to know that that's what I do, but really it's through conversations and communications that we kind of give the bespoke pitch or proposal based on whatever the client's needs are.
Awesome. And guys, if you did not hear that, all of Staci's contact information is in her description down below in this episode description podcast. If you were happy with today's podcast, please subscribe, like, and comment. And guys, again, I apologize. I am having some nasty things with my eye today where it just is feeling off. So if you see that my eyes were closed, I apologize, guys. But next episode, hopefully my eye feels better.
I did not put him to sleep. I promise.
No, she didn't. No, she didn't. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my cat's allergies. But guys, this has been a great episode, Staci. And remember, what Staci's done is carve her own niche out in the legal field. She's not one of those, run-of-the-mill PI, personal injury, immigration, criminal attorneys. And that just shows you the versatility that the legal field has. Staci, it was great having me. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Own your growth. Scale with systems powered by GrowthX. Subscribe to Success in Excess for those who lead with precision and scale with purpose.